We're joined here today by a very distinguished guest from Israel, Ben-Dror Yemini, as we say in Ireland, Falta, and as you would say in Israel, Shalom. So welcome to Ireland, Mr. Yemini.
Shalom and thank you.
Yes. You've been here for a couple of days now. I've had the privilege of hearing you talk on several occasions, which has been extremely enlightening. But if I could start off by asking you, usually Ireland is seen not so much hostile to Israel, certainly the Irish media, but not very empathetic towards Israel. You've been here for a couple of days now. What's your experience been? Has that changed in any regard?
Let me tell you, first of all, I cannot compare because I've not been here before, but of course I read a lot about Ireland, and you know what? I'm surprised. I'm surprised because it was not as bad as I expected. Which means that people were not hostile. I think I had one professor in school who repeated this kind of cliches against Israel with so many, wow, Israel is so, Israel is that. But generally speaking, people were open-minded. I met a lot of academics, I met a lot of journalists, I was interviewed, and you know what? I'm leaving tonight with a good feeling. With a good feeling.
Yeah, I read a statement that's been attributed to you, and I wonder if you could at least confirm, and if it's true, what the meaning you implied by it was, that you had described a lot of anti-Israel critique, the politically acceptable form of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Is that a statement that is attributable to you?
Let me tell you something. Anti-Semitism was based on demonization, dehumanization, and a lot of lies, blood libels. Look at the people who are anti-Zionist. Dehumanization, delegitimization, demonization. The same story again. Look at the anti-Zionists, what they're saying. They're saying that Israel does not have legitimacy to exist as a Jewish state. It's when you look carefully at what people say when they were anti-Semites in the 30s, you find the same expression. Jews are threatening the global peace. Jews are dangerous to humanity. Jews might destroy the world, again and again. And when you hear people saying that, for example, Israel is the main cause to violence in the world, it's becoming dangerous. They are not only anti-Zionists.
Not an issue that specifically came up in your talk is that I would have seen anti-Zionist or anti-Israel, I would have put them into three different categories. One is anti-Zionism in the Arab or the Muslim world. Clearly we would expect that there is an agenda there, and I would acknowledge that that probably involves legitimization. The other areas, again, I would put into is the Western world, what we would call the ultra-right. Again, they have a historic agenda that's just been updated. The one I find more unusual is the left agenda against Israel, because I'm 2 years old, 2 years younger than modern Israel, so it's been there throughout my life just like yours. I find the left one strange because in 1967, and to a lesser degree, 73, the left supported Israel. Do you have any thoughts particularly about that one, about why that one turned?
Well, when we look after the reasons, we find out the sources even much earlier. But the big change happened, yes, you're right, 70s. Somehow PLO became a kind of organization of the underdogs that they should support. And I think that because of the 67 and the so-called occupation, 6 Days War, then people from the left, slowly by slowly, shifted their support to the Palestinians. Yeah. There is a problem, sure. but we have to put something in mind. In Russia, for example, they were anti-Zionist all the way before 67, and many people in the left were influenced by Russia. what we call the useful idiots.
Okay.
I mean, they follow the order of the party. I mean, that's what they did.
Again, Mr. Yemini, my recollection, I'll put it that way, of the late 60s, early 70s, when you had the PLO, before Munich changed things, is that they were more or less accepted like rock and roll gangsters. You know, they had shades, they had leather jackets, they had funny names. They were the sorts that the Europeans could relate to. I find that understandable, that we can put an explanation on that. What I find difficult is that the same leftist organizations are now finding common ground with Hezbollah, Hamas, that they've actually got nothing in common with. That I find is, to me, is characteristic of naked anti-Semitism. How do you feel about that?
I feel quite bad, because I think people they have a problem. They should ask themselves, what is going, how come that we support people, movements that are supporting themselves oppression of women, for example,
Sure.
oppressing of human rights. I mean, how come? They should ask themselves again and again, what is happening to us? I mean, I know they always depict Israel as the aggressor and the Palestinian side or the Muslim side as the underdog. So it's all based on so much, so many lies. And people should look at the conflict, at the basics of the conflict. That's actually what I try to do, to speak about the creation of Israel, to speak about what does it mean occupation. It's not what people think. It's something totally different. The same about the refugees. The same about human rights. People don't know. They just don't know that, for example, Israel is trying to protect human civilians much more than any other battlefield in the world, and so on and so on. But they don't know because they don't look at the facts. There is a problem.
This comes back then to what is the motivation, because when I look at some of the opposition, I think, well, it might be valid if it was designed to, say, strengthen a negotiating position of a future Palestinian state. But what I've been seeing, particularly over the last 3 to 5 years, is that so much of the opposition, I would characterize it by seeking to delegitimize the state of Israel. And that's looking at it over a long period of time. How do you feel about that, that there has been a change in the way information is being presented against Israel?
Well, let me tell you, I cannot define it better, because it's exactly what you said. I'm striving for peace, I'm pro-peace. Let me tell you, I'm pro-Palestinian, I'm pro-Israeli. I want 2 states for 2 peoples. The peoples that we are talking about, from the left, mainly from the radical left, let's not make generalizations, it's not every left-winger, but many of them in the radical left, and they have, unfortunately, a lot of influence. They are against the very existence of Israel, which is unbelievable. I mean, it's against the principle of the international law, of self-determination, but they are against. And when I meet them in many panels, debates, and they tell me, we are against nation states. You know what, fair enough. And then I ask them something very simple. Tell me something. Did you ever demonstrate against Bosnia, against Czech Republic, against Slovakia, against Croatia, against other states? How comes that you have only one state in mind to fight against? Israel. Can you explain it? And they don't have any explanation.
Something that you didn't mention, or at least if you did, I was clearly too busy filming to pick it up. Most of what you would talk about within the Middle East was Arab opposition, Arab propaganda, Arab statements. But these days, the main opposition in the region to Israel is not Arab. It's either Turkish or Iranian. How do you feel? I mean, particularly when we look at the Iranian regime, that's almost delegitimization central in that sense of the word. They still talk about the denial of the Holocaust, they still talk about the protocols of the Elders of Zion. I'm seeing a lot of propaganda against Israel, what I would say, coming out of Iranian sources. In other words, it's very creative and it's very widespread. How do you feel about that as a journalist?
First of all, yes, let's admit that the Arab world last 2 years is quite busy with itself.
Sure.
A lot of kind of civil wars, confrontations, internal confrontations. They don't have much time for Israel. Then the main problem right now is Iran. But Iran is supporting two organizations, Hamas and Hezbollah. So it is all connected, and we don't know what is the next step in Syria. Al-Qaeda, Muslim Brothers, we just don't know. We have a lot of question marks, but we don't know. But Iran is supporting terror organizations that are not only against Israel, and we have to emphasize it, they are against the West. They killed more people from the West than people from Israel. And let's not forget just one more thing, they are part of the global jihad. The global jihad, they have Shiites and they have Sunnis. In only one thing they are united. They are fighting each other. They kill each other in many places. But only in one thing they are united, in the hatred towards Israel. Based on some interpretation of the Islam. Now, let's not forget one more thing, which is highly important. The global jihad, they kill mainly Muslims. 99% of the victims of the global jihad in Nigeria, in Somalia, in Mali, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Iraq, even in Dagestan from time to time, they kill themselves. The global jihad killed Muslims and not Israelis and not the Irish people and not Americans.
Do you think then, I mean, that most people would say, well, that's Israeli propaganda, that there is no global jihad, there's a lot of pockets of, shall we say, uprisings in that sense of the word. How valid then is it to say that there is some cohesive thought behind it, or are a lot of these opportunistic that are being funded by wealthier benefactors with clearly different agendas?
Needless to say that money is playing and is part of the game. In Britain, for example, there was a research dealing with the Islamic institutions in so many universities, and they found out that all these Islamic centers were established in order to, in a way, to make the young Muslims moderate. The outcome was the opposite. And why? Because of the Islamic money, sometimes from Saudi Arabia, sometimes from other Gulf countries. And actually the result was that more young Muslims became much more radicalized. And somehow it's going with the radical left because they are financed, supported by the same sources of money. So, and many faculties in the universities are supported by the same kind of money. So we have a problem. We have a real problem, and people, academics, intellectuals, people who want this world to be more free, more democratic, should open their eyes. Something is happening, and we cannot forget one thing. Again, the victims of the global jihad, which is coming to the West, the victims are yet mainly.
So how do you feel? You were quite critical of, say, what I call the Irish Boats to Gaza group. How do you feel? Do you think they're being naive when they think they're going, realistically they know they're never going to get to Gaza?
It's much worse than being naive. For example, I think you saw it in my presentation, a video clip from the TV channel of the Hamas al-Aqsa saying we should kill all the Jews, we should kill all the Christians, we should kill all the communists, to the last one of them. And people don't know it. I mean, and they are coming as the useful idiots in order to hug the leadership of the Hamas, when the TV channel of the Hamas itself, the official one, is saying, kill them all. What is happening here? People are so blinded.
To a certain degree, we can understand that, you know, young activists, we've all been enthusiasts in our day. You were particularly critical about...
Enthusiastic about what? About people that want to kill them? I mean,
Yeah,
it's something that I cannot understand, but here they are in the Hamas, the official channel. They are saying, we are going to kill you, because this is the ideology of the global jihad. And here they are coming to hug them.
Yes, no, when I meant by enthusiasm, we were all enthusiastic
Yeah.
for political change. That's the prerogative of young people. But you were particularly critical about legislators, particularly European legislators, who should know better.
They should
What's
know
your-
better. Yeah,
Yeah,
they should know
they should
better. And part of the problem is that the EU and Ireland, the government of Ireland, they support a lot of NGOs that support the right of return. Right of return is the biggest obstacle to peace now. The biggest obstacle to peace, much more even than the settlements, which I'm against, by the way.
Sure.
Now, I said it again and again. I'm writing in almost in every article that I publish in Israel. I'm not a big supporter of the current government, but it's not the point. They asked for the right of return, which means, and they say it, and they repeatedly say it, this is the way that we will exterminate Israel, and they say it. This is, as one of the heads of the assistants of Arafat said some years ago, we have a winning card for the extermination of Israel, which is the right of return. And yet, the EU, and yet, the Irish government support NGOs on behalf of human rights, of course, but those NGOs are part of the Al-Auda, which means the right of return campaign. I mean, it is counterproductive to peace, and they should understand it.
And perhaps you could clarify this for me. You put up a quote there with Abu Mazen. He turned down what was classified the
Yeah.
best deal ever. The quote you used is, "I cannot expect for 4 million people to accept 5,000 returns," something along those lines.
Yeah, exactly.
However,
It's from the
have I
book.
got-
It's from the book of Condoleezza Rice.
sure. I thought I saw somewhere in the last few months that Abu Mazen had symbolically given up his own right of return, and that was supposed to be seen as a gesture. I'm not going, even though I technically would have the right of return to Safed, I'm giving it up. Was that not a gesture?
Yes, it was. And immediately after, I published an article welcoming him and saying, well, this is the way. This is the way. There was only one problem, that exactly between the time that I sent my article and the time that the article published, he himself regretted and explained that he doesn't mean, you know what, I do hope that there will be a change. I do hope that even this sign that he even retracted, yet it is a sign. I do hope, because I'm looking for a moderate leadership from both sides. I'm looking for a leadership that will give up fantasies like Great Palestine or like the Great Israel. I do hope. And every sign that is coming from the Palestinians' side is highly welcome, needless to say. So yes, I want this kind of signs, but in one condition. I want the EU, I want the Irish government, I want any other government not to support anyone who is supporting the right of return, in order to promote peace.
Something that again you were quite critical of was what we would call Jewish critics of Israel, and almost top of the list every time whenever people want to justify it is Noam Chomsky. You didn't bring in Chomsky. The other one is Norman Finkelstein.
Yeah.
I've never found it that simply because one is a Jew that your criticism carries any more weight. How do you feel about that? Is it that every time we hear something, well, Chomsky said this and he's a Jew and Finkelstein said this.
It's the same phenomena that I spoke about with Israeli journalists who publish so many lies about Israel. In Israel, it's part of the freedom of speech, and when people read only one newspaper that is published in English, they think that this is Israel, but they are totally wrong. I mean, it is part of the spectrum of opinions in Israel, and people don't understand it. First of all, I'm proud to be part of Israel when Israel is publishing, when in Israel it is allowed to publish everything, including lies. From the other hand, many times we have to refute the lies. And it doesn't make any difference what is the source of the lies. Israelis, Jews, yes, Jews, unfortunately, are part of the campaign against the very existence of Israel.
Sure.
You know what? I'm very sad, but this is life. But Noam Chomsky, that you mentioned, he went all the way to meet Nasrallah. Wow, he's hero. So He has a problem with himself, with his identity maybe, I don't know. You know what, I'm not sure that he needs any kind of a political interpretation. Sorry to say, maybe a psychologist will be much better.
Sure.
In order to understand that kind of, I don't have to be an Israeli or a Jew in order to have a lot of question marks. As a human being, I mean, come on, he's supporting the Hezbollah. Come on, other people in the United States support the Taliban. Come on, other people from here are supporting the Hamas. I mean, the phenomena that people went crazy is quite known. You know what? It proves only one thing, that also Jews are part of the deal. That's all.
What about then other ones who would be non-Jewish critics but are always regularly quoted as well, Robert Fisk being one, and the other one who I'm always surprised about is the correspondent for The Guardian, Harriet Sharwood. Is virulently anti-Israel. They don't seem to have an agenda. Should we not take their reports as somehow or
I'll
other
tell you,
objective?
for example, I'll give you an example in order to show what we are talking about. We are talking about, for example, Robert Fisk. He published an article during the Castlein operation, saying we have to understand that the people, the population of Gaza Strip is composed of refugees, and they are suffering for so many years because they are in refugee camps. You know what? Yes, they are refugees. Yes, they are suffering. But, when you don't tell the readers that we are talking about 42 million people that became refugees out of population exchange, when you do not tell them that a bigger number of Jews came to Israel as refugees and they are not refugees anymore because they were absorbed, when you don't tell people that the only one reason that they are refugees is because they decided to leave the problem as an open wound against Israel, when you don't say it, you are lying to your readers. So to tell that Robert Fisk is a reliable source about the conflict, it's a joke.
Sure. Yeah, something I was very reassured to hear, because I invariably ask people that come out from Israel, what does peace look like? You were the closest I've heard to actually describing what peace looked like, which was two states for two people, not necessarily living in harmony, but living in
Harmony will take time. You know what?
Yeah.
You know what? We cannot forget what is going on in the Arab world. Unfortunately, you know, since the foundation of Israel up to now, we are talking about 12 million people that were killed in the Muslim and Arab world. Most of them were killed by Muslims and Arabs. So in Algeria, they killed each other in the 90s. Between 100 and 200,000 were killed. In Syria right now, they are killing each other. 60,000, 70,000, they kill each other. In Lebanon, so many civil wars. I mean, we have no idea when the next one is coming, but it will come. For sure, because the Hezbollah took over. So first of all, I want, you know what I want? To tell you the truth, not harmony. For the moment, I want separation. Live your life, let us live our life. The day will come, and I do hope that the day will come, when we will live also in harmony. First of all, I want the harmony to exist among themselves. But do you see any harmony? Without any connection to Israel. I guess we all agree that there is not any connection between what's happening in Algeria or in Nigeria or in other parts of the world or Darfur. There is not any connection to Israel. Do they live in harmony? I'm asking.
Yeah, something I was very reassured to hear, because I invariably ask people that come out from Israel, what does peace look like? You were the closest I've heard to actually describing what peace looked like, which was two states for two people, not necessarily living in harmony, but living in peaceful existence.
Harmony will take time. You know what?
Yeah.
You know what? We cannot forget what is going on in the Arab world. Unfortunately, you know, since the foundation of Israel up to now, we are talking about 12 million people that were killed in the Muslim and Arab world. Most of them were killed by Muslims and Arabs. So in Algeria, they killed each other in the 90s. Between 100 and 200,000 were killed. In Syria right now, they are killing each other. 60,000, 70,000, they kill each other. In Lebanon, so many civil wars. I mean, we have no idea when the next one is coming, but it will come. For sure, because the Hezbollah took over. So first of all, I want, you know what I want? to tell you the truth, not harmony. For the moment, I want separation. Live your life. Let us live our life. The day will come, and I do hope that the day will come when we will live also in harmony. First of all, I want the harmony to exist among themselves. But do you see any harmony? Without any connection to Israel. I guess we all agree that there is not any connection between what's happening in Algeria or in Nigeria or in other parts of the world or Darfur. There is not any connection to Israel. Do they live in harmony? I'm asking. They are not.
Yeah. Coming back then to the issue of peace, and many people in Israel would say, well, there's nobody on the Palestinian side that is capable of not only negotiating a peace deal, but delivering on one. We heard a lot about the Clinton deal. You talked about that yourself. We talked about we've heard about the Barak deal, which, from what I've read, would appear to be a very favourable deal. Something that came at me when I was listening to you is that it was rejected on the Arab side, so it's particularly hypothetical.
Once and again, yeah.
Sure. Could it have been sold on the Israeli side? That was the because did that not envisage divided in Jerusalem?
The guidelines of ex-president Bill Clinton are not simple for most Israelis. Not simple. I'm not going to tell you that it's going to be easy to implement such a solution. But I'm looking for brave leadership from both sides. What I know is that 2 times in the last 12 years, the same guidelines by Clinton and then by Ehud Olmert, who was the Prime Minister of Israel, 2 times it was rejected by the Palestinian side. So actually the question is correct. I mean, it's not going to be easy. Partition of Jerusalem and so on. It's not going to be easy. And if you will go to a public poll right now, I will not delude you that most Israelis will accept it. And of course not most of the Palestinians. But I can tell you one more thing. Before the agreement with Egypt was signed, the majority was against it. A day after, the majority was in favor of it. I do hope that the same process will take place with the Palestinians one day, when they will give up the fantasies. And yes, also Israel has to give up some fantasies. But for the moment, the main obstacle is the demand, or the fantasy, as I call it, of the right of return. This is even much more an obstacle to peace than the settlements, which I'm not a big supporter of.
You were very, very clear about that, which I was delighted to hear. But perhaps the other fantasy, and we heard this quite recently when Ishmael Khaldi was here. Some of the people who turned up to hear him, he's a member of the diplomatic service. We're bringing out this whole idea, and I'm particularly interested here because your name is Yemini, that when Jews lived in the Muslim world, it was a golden age and everything was happy, and why can't we just go back to that? And essentially, that's really what Hamas want. It's a bit of a Islamic Disney World, and give it time and you'll get used to it again.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the Copts in Egypt? How do you feel about the Christians in the Gaza Strip? How do you feel about the Christians in Iraq? How do you feel about them? I mean, show me one minority in the Arab world nowadays that enjoys equal rights. Show me. Why not? I do hope that the Arab world, the Muslim world, will change its way and will be much more liberal, much more open-minded. I do hope for them, not only for us, but to raise the idea that the Jews lived in harmony with the Arabs. Come on, I mean, we know history, there are so many books. Well, sometimes it was better, sometimes it was worse, sometimes we had pogroms, sometimes not, but it was not harmony. You can call it in many names, harmony. For sometimes, you know, here and there, there was also harmony. Most time, it was not any harmony. For sure not in the last 100 years, before Zionism.
How do you feel then when you hear somebody say, well, you know, when Jews got kicked out of Spain, they were all taken into Turkey and everybody lived happily ever after again? Was that is that part of what we would call the fabric?
It's not only it's not propaganda. It's true. It's true. It's totally true. I mean, in that time, the Ottoman Empire welcomed Jews for prosperity for all sides. And there is a very famous quotation of the leader in that time of the empire, the Sultan, saying how stupid they are to force out the Jews. It's a tragedy for us. It's a tragedy for us. They are going to lose, we are going to win, which was true. I do hope that this kind of attitude will prevail again. I do hope, I do pray, but unfortunately, it was a very short period of this kind of harmony. Yes, it was. We cannot deny it. There were years of prosperity, of cooperation. But unfortunately, with the global jihad of today, which is taking over, with the main person of the Islamic world, Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi, who is a kind of supporter of Hitler, unfortunately, we have to look for the good times, but they are not with us.
Last but by no means least, Israel has just had an election. Technically, there's not a government there. One of the first acts, and you did mention it the other night, I was a bit surprised myself, as one of the first acts of the outgoing Prime Minister was to bring in Mrs. Livni with a brief to investigate avenues, is the way I'll put it, for peace. How do you interpret that? Is that just is that electioneering, or is that government?
Both. I mean, first of all, it's politics, but Tzipi Livni is the right man, in this case, the right woman. I mean, she is experienced. She knows something about the negotiation with the Palestinians. She was there for many months. She had the Israeli side in the negotiation with Saib Arikat and Abu Allah from the Palestinian side. Why not? Why not to try again? I mean, you know, it's very easy to lose hope. It's very easy to say again and again, there is no way. And many times when I'm showing the facts, I'm showing the realities. Peace was rejected again and again by the Palestinians. 47, 2000, Clinton, 2008, almost. But it doesn't mean that we have to give up. I mean, that's how a peace process is working. Many times people are saying no, and one day circumstances are changed and something positive is happening. Not that I see that it's happening next week. Don't misunderstand me. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to give up. I think there is a solution. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not the most complicated. We have a solution. We need the brave leadership in both sides in order to implement it.
We're seeing somewhat unusual movements in the Palestinian side, particularly with Hamas. Do you think somebody like Mashal could be a force for peace, or do you think, again, this is somebody who may have been politically dead and has had a lucky resurrection?
My answer will be that up to now, unfortunately, he proved only the opposite. I mean, total destruction of Israel. I mean, they are all committed to only one goal, and they say it again and again. Sometimes, when they are speaking to the Western journalists, they are trying to sound like more reasonable sometimes. But when they are speaking to their own people, they are not at all. And they are speaking about the extermination, the destruction of Israel, about one state from the river to the sea. By the way, they are not so much nationalistic, they are much more Islamist. We have to put it in mind. I mean, you will not even find the term for the Palestinian state in the Hamas Charter, but you will find the destruction, the extermination of Jews in paragraph 17 of the Hamas Charter. So that's what you will find. But it doesn't mean that we have to say that there is no way, because a lot of terror organizations change their way during the process. You know what? I'm supporting even negotiation with the Hamas in one condition, that there is something to speak about, not about the way that they will execute me. If they are serious, I'm supporting it.
Last but by no means least, you mentioned a man called Abbas Zaki, who could be the replacement for Abu Mazen. The statement that you attributed to him basically was along the lines of, well, we'll talk peace in public, but behind closed doors, we're really not that different from the Hamas objective. That doesn't bode well if that's supposedly the stance of the secularists as well?
Look, yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem because when we are striving for peace and we are doing whatever we can in order to achieve peace, we cannot ignore that kind of terrible voices. And he said publicly, when we say 67 borders, we mean the extermination, the end of Israel. He said it, not me. And you need a lot of energy to go to negotiate with the people like him, when from one hand he's saying the end of Israel, from the other hand you have to tell yourself, no, we have to keep going. No, we cannot give up on the peace process. But yet we have to take a lot of how to call it, other measures that will secure the security of Israel. We don't want that the peace will be a way to exterminate Israel. Yes, it's not simple, but we have to go for it.
One of the things that came out of your talk the other night was that there is a positive way, that things are possible, and as you say, it's not the most intractable problem in the world. We know that there are NGOs going around Irish schools telling the opposite. We'll be sending your video to them. So hopefully we get some balance and bring some more light onto a subject. So Mr. Ben-Dror Yemini, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.